It was a warm summer evening when Grandpa first noticed something strange in the air. He was sitting in his favorite chair on the back porch, sipping sweet tea and listening to the cicadas hum, when a faint buzzing broke through the usual night sounds. At first, he thought it might be a bee or a neighbor's lawnmower running late, but the noise had a steady whirring rhythm that didn't fit either. Curious, he leaned forward and shaded his eyes. That's when he saw it hovering just above the tree line, a black speck with blinking lights, drifting slowly like some mechanical bird. It wasn't high up like an airplane, and it wasn't flying away like a toy somebody lost control of. No, this thing lingered. It floated deliberately over his backyard, dipping closer, then pulling back, its little camera lens flashing in the twilight. Grandpa's eyes narrowed. He had seen enough newfangled gadgets to know what this was. A drone. But whose? Kids in the neighborhood had toy drones, sure, but none of them hovered like this, steady and calculated. This wasn't play. This was watching. He sat still, pretending not to notice, though his blood was starting to simmer. The machine moved left, then right, almost circling, before finally drifting off across the rooftops. The buzzing faded into the distance, but the uneasy feeling it left behind stuck with him like a burr under his boot. Spying, he muttered to himself. Somebody's spying. That night, Grandpa couldn't shake it from his mind. He thought about how it had turned its little eye directly toward his porch, how it hovered just long enough to feel invasive. He'd lived through decades of neighbors coming and going, through wars and elections, through rules and changes, but one thing had always been constant. A man's backyard was his private space. And now, with one strange buzzing, that privacy felt violated. The next morning, as he walked through his garden, Grandpa kept glancing up at the sky. Every sound of a passing insect made him tense, half expecting that little black shadow to appear again. Something told him it wasn't done, that it would be back. And when it returned, he'd be ready. For Grandpa, this wasn't just about a machine. It was the beginning of something bigger, something he wasn't about to let slide the following morning. Grandpa couldn't shake the thought of that buzzing machine. It wasn't just the invasion of privacy that bothered him, it was the principle. His home was his castle, and no committee had the right to hover over it like a nosy crow. As he stood at the mailbox flipping through the usual stack of letters, one envelope caught his eye. It was from the HOA, stamped with their logo in bold ink. He tore it open right there on the curb. Inside was a polite but firm notice. Residents are reminded to maintain their lawns at a uniform height and ensure compliance with all neighborhood standards. Unannounced inspections may occur, Grandpa grumbled. Unannounced inspections, my foot, he muttered, crumpling the letter. That drone wasn't just some experiment, it was their new tool. Later that day, his neighbor Martha ambled over with her dog. She had the kind of smile that said she already knew something. So, she said, you've seen the HO's new toy? Grandpa narrowed his eyes. You mean the flying rat buzzing over our houses? That's the one, Martha replied. They say it's for keeping an eye on safety. But I heard them at the last meeting. They're looking for any excuse to hand out fines. Too many weeds, a broken fence panel, a boat trailer in the driveway, they want to catch it all. Grandpa felt his jaw tighten. He thought back to the times the HOA had hounded him, once over the color of his mailbox. Another time over a shed that was apparently 2 feet too tall. Now they were hiding behind a drone to snoop without setting foot on his property. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Grandpa sat on his porch with his binoculars. Sure enough, the buzzing came again. The drone drifted lazily from yard to yard, tilting its tiny camera at gardens, roofs, and patios. When it hovered over his lawn, Grandpa could almost imagine the smug faces of the HOA board members watching through a screen somewhere, jotting down notes. He lowered the binoculars and let out a long breath. "So that's how they want to play it," he said quietly. "Well, two can play that game." For Grandpa, this wasn't just about grass or fences anymore. It was about dignity, freedom, and the right to sit in his backyard without feeling like he was under a microscope. The HOA had declared their rules from the sky. Now he was ready to answer them from the ground. Grandpa had never been a man to waste words or time once his mind was made up. The moment he confirmed the drone belonged to the HOA, something inside him clicked into place. All those years of dealing with their letters, their fines, their smug committee meetings where neighbors acted like tin pot dictators, it all boiled down to this. They had crossed the line, and now Grandpa was ready to draw one of his own. The next afternoon, he set about preparing like a man half his age. First came the lawn chair, placed square in the middle of his backyard, facing the sky. Then the cooler, filled with cold lemonade and a couple of beers, because patience was going to be key. He knew that whoever was piloting the drone thought of themselves as clever, but machines had habits, and people behind machines had patterns. He would wait them out. From inside the garage, he brought out his trusty slingshot, the same one he had once used to chase raccoons away from his vegetable garden. It wasn't fancy, but in steady hands it was deadly accurate. He lined up a row of shiny steel ball bearings on the table beside him, each one glinting in the late afternoon sun like little promises of payback. The hours stretched slowly, but Grandpa didn't mind. Waiting was part of the trap. Every time he heard the faintest buzz of wings or saw the flicker of a shadow, his hand twitched toward the slingshot. A squirrel darted across the fence, making him chuckle. "Not today, fella. I've got bigger prey in mind." As the sky turned dusky orange, the buzzing finally returned. Soft at first, almost like a mosquito, then louder, mechanical, insistent. Grandpa's eyes sharpened. The drone emerged from behind the Hendersons' roof, lights blinking, propellers whirring. It hovered, dipping low, scanning like some nosy bird of prey. Grandpa leaned back in his chair, calm and still, as if he were just another old man enjoying the evening. But inside, his blood thrummed with anticipation. Slowly, deliberately, he picked up the slingshot, slid a ball bearing into the pouch, and pulled it back with the easy grace of long practice. His breathing steadied. His eyes locked on target. The trap was set. The drone didn't know it yet, but tonight it wasn't the hunter. Tonight, it was the prey. The drone hovered closer, its tiny camera eye glowing faintly as it swept over the paintless garden, the patio, and even the roofline as if searching for something to report back to its masters. Grandpa's grip on the slingshot tightened. He had spent the last hour watching the shadows stretch across the yard, waiting for this exact moment, and now it was here. The cool evening air felt electric, buzzing with the sound of the propellers. With the precision of a man who had spent years teaching his kids how to aim at tin cans on summer afternoons, Grandpa pulled the band back until it trembled. The ball bearing gleamed like a bullet between his fingers. Then, with a sharp release, he let it fly. The steel pellet cut through the air with a faint whistle, striking the drone dead center. There was a metallic crack, followed by the sputter of failing rotors. The machine wobbled, jerked sideways, then spun helplessly out of control. Sparks danced in the dimming light as it plummeted, crashing headfirst into the rosebush with a sound that was more satisfying than Grandpa cared to admit. For a long moment, silence hung over the yard, broken only by the chirping of crickets. Then, from the street beyond, came the shouts of neighborhood kids who had witnessed the whole thing. "He got it! Grandpa got the drone!" They cried, clapping and cheering as though they'd just watched a hero strike down a villain in a movie. Grandpa lowered the slingshot and exhaled slowly, a satisfied smirk tugging at his lips. He walked over to the mangled wreckage, its little lights flickering weakly as if protesting its fate. "Not in my backyard," he muttered, nudging the pieces with his boot. By the time the HOA realized what had happened, word had already spread across the neighborhood. Some folks laughed, some whispered in shock, and others nodded in quiet approval. But no matter how anyone felt about it, the story was the same. Grandpa had taken a stand, and he'd done it with style. That night, sitting on his porch with a cold drink in hand, Grandpa felt a rare peace settle over him. The HOA might come knocking tomorrow, fines and warnings in hand, but for now, he had won. The skies above his home were his again, and the drone that dared to trespass had learned the hard way that some fences couldn't be crossed, not when Grandpa was watching.